Hi, this is Amanda Sarai with this art called Life. Thank you for being here today. So today is a special day for me. It is my 6-year cancerversary, my 6-year rebirth day, my remission rebirth day, my 6-year anniversary of my remission scan. That said, I was officially in the clear. Treatment was done, treatment worked. So it's a very big, exciting day for me, my rebirth day. So I have 2 birthdays in the month of September. I find myself to be very lucky. So anyway, in honor of this day, I wanted to come on here and share my personal journey. So my cancer journey as one of spiritual awakening. So the other day I was on this group call and we went into breakout rooms, and there was a prompt, a discussion prompt where we would go around and share about an experience that brought us into our hearts. And the thing that came to mind immediately was my cancer diagnosis, which might sound completely backwards to many people, but this is it. For me, it really gave me permission to break free from all that was not aligned for me. I knew my life was not what I wanted it to be at the time. I knew things were not working for me. And so getting the diagnosis was almost like, and it didn't happen overnight per se, but certainly not, but it was almost like a permission slip to walk away from everything that was not aligned for me. Again, this wasn't an overnight snap of the fingers kind of awakening, but there had been seeds planted prior to the diagnosis, and throughout the journey, throughout the diagnostic journey, I had more and more information and intuitions come to me that really began to open me up to this journey. And I did not foresee where it would take me. I did not foresee that my journey would take me this far down the road of spirituality. I didn't even really know that was possible at the time, but I was also stepping into this field of infinite possibilities. So I was simultaneously trusting my heart, trusting my intuition, and allowing it to guide me forward on this journey. And I've become more consciously aware of this process as I have gone deeper. And there have been many times where I was in tears, on my knees, like, why? And then turn a corner, oh, that's why. I saw a meme like that recently. I was like, that's exactly what the journey's like. So today really marks a big milestone for me. So I also shared a post in a group on Facebook recently, a cancer group, that was sharing this perspective, my point of view, that my healing journey really truly began after treatment ended. So I went through 600 hours of chemotherapy, which, yes, is a lot. I had, just to share every little nuance of my journey, I had 600 hours of chemotherapy inpatient over the course of 6 rounds, 100 hours each round. Every 3 weeks, I would go into the hospital inpatient for about 4 or so days. It was dose adjusted, and I had an immunotherapy plus 5 chemotherapy cocktail. So it was a whole slew of medication. I had prednisone in there as well, steroid. I had all sorts of other medications to deal with the side effects. So it was very intense. I made it through round 1 pretty well, not too many side effects. And my hair did fall though, right before I went into round 2. So I really went through the belly of the beast, as it were. And from the moment of diagnosis, I also knew that I could not rely only on treatment. Now, I'm going to get into my journey and share all the details so that people can understand the perspective from which I was operating, and how that wound up bringing me here. And so maybe it'll plant seeds, maybe it'll spark some knowings, maybe it will resonate on a deeper level to tell you that you're not alone if you've had similar experiences, because I don't think too many people see this journey as one that can open up possibilities, open up other opportunities, as one that can bring us deeper into ourselves. And that's really what this journey has done. To go through a cancer diagnosis and a spiritual awakening at the same time is not easy. This is why it has taken me about 6 years to grapple with everything and to finally really figure out what has been going on and what my truth is. So I had this little phrase come to me: my journey has been imperfectly perfect. It hasn't been perfect by a long shot, and yet it is all in divine perfect timing. It is all divinely perfect at the same time. This other notion of divine perfection, not our 3D egoic version of perfection, which is one of the layers of healing that I've had to grapple with. Virgo perfectionist my whole life. So overthinking. So again, my journey has been out of the head into the heart. So with that prompt the other day, it immediately reminded me of this journey, because this has been the overarching theme of my entire healing journey. Out of the head into the heart, trusting my heart wisdom, trusting my intuition, and allowing myself to tune in to my soul, the whispers of my soul, and really allow that to guide me forward rather than the shoulds and the coulds. And at the end of the day, it's not easy. I'm not sitting here pretending it's easy. And I'm also sharing my journey so that it doesn't necessarily have to take 6 years for other people to find themselves, to really feel grounded in who they are and the direction and purpose of their life. I do believe there is a layer of my journey that had to be the way it was, again, divinely perfect, that I had to experience everything from the perspective of what doesn't work as well as what does, and to kind of grapple and go through this from a challenging perspective, because I didn't have a guidebook. I didn't have a guide guiding me through all the different layers and nuances. I found information there. I found information there. I really had to dig deep. I really had to go and do the research myself. And I believe my journey had to be this way because it is my dharma, my path of service to help others, to provide that guidebook in a sense, to provide that guiding light, to shine the path forward. So it is a little bit more, I never want to use the word easy, but there's perhaps this sense of direction and guidance along the way, even though of course everybody's journey is going to look a bit different. So from all of these nuanced layers of perspective, this is where I'm coming from in sharing my journey with you today. It is high time, I feel. I also want to note that it is my 6-year anniversary in a 6-year, universal number 6 year. So the number 6 is about unity. It's about wholeness. It's about merging the masculine and the feminine. It's about coming into union. And yes, that can mean in the context of relationship, but for me, the more beautiful sense of union is coming into union within. That is the journey of wholeness. And that has been my journey. So I've been talking about healing into wholeness for a while now, and I had to go on that journey myself first. In order to guide people on their journey back to wholeness, I had to walk a few steps ahead, of course, right? And there's the expression, how does it go? The expression, we teach what we most need to learn. And this is so very true in my case, because who better than somebody who has walked the path before you? And here I am. I'm not saying I have figured out all the secrets of the universe by any stretch of the imagination. I am not a master or expert at anything. I am on the journey of self-mastery, mastery of myself. And that has brought me into a great deal of wisdom and knowledge that is universal, that is true for all, because we are all one, we are all connected. So what is true for me is true for you in a lot of ways. And we are all having a unique human experience. So again, your journey is unique to you, and we all find commonalities and parallels within the stories of others. So I hope there is a little bit of, there's some nuggets, there's some wisdom in here that you might find helpful or useful or interesting. And here we are. So it was March 23rd, 2016 that I got my first CT scan. And that was really the first spark of this higher consciousness really coming into the foreground in my life, because my uncle had passed away the night before. My uncle Don, he had passed away from cancer, and he had been on a clinical trial and he wasn't handling well. I forget actually what form of cancer my uncle Don had, because the truth is there were 7 other family members on my dad's side of the family that had had cancer. And he was just the latest in them not making it. So sadly, everybody eventually, not necessarily overnight, but they all succumbed to cancer-related complications, or the treatment itself. So yeah, I already had this deep, I suppose I carried a deep fear of cancer, but it was a fear that I carried more for my father, because it was his side of the family, than I did myself, because everyone had seen me as the healthiest person in the family, ironically, the healthiest person they knew in a lot of perspectives, because I was a vegetarian hot power yogi who had been traveling around the world for years, having a lot of beautiful life experiences, experiencing a great deal of struggle and challenge as well, yes, to be sure, and yet I had a pretty great life by many perspectives. I had a lot of amazing opportunities, and a lot of opportunities to expand myself. And yet I kept finding myself in these situations back in New York City where I felt stuck. I was stressed out beyond imagination. I had been dealing with a cough, and it had gotten worse over the winter, but here we were in Manhattan. I was stressed out. It was winter. I mean, who is going to jump within someone the age of 30, a healthy hot power yogi, the age of 30, who's going to jump to cancer? So I had been to see the doctor in December with a very minor pain in my chest. I had had a massage over Thanksgiving weekend, funny enough, and I think she pressed on my back, and I think something must have shifted inside. And I felt this kind of twinge of pain the following day, and a couple days later, I was like, this isn't really going away. So I went to the doctor, and he diagnosed me with pleurisy, inflammation of the lung lining. Now, I want to be very clear, I am not blaming my doctor for misdiagnosing me, because again, who is going to jump to cancer in a young, healthy 30-year-old with a very, very minor chest pain at the age of 30? So I don't blame him. I'm just sharing the full perspective. And in the meantime, I had already been very stressed. I was dealing with a great deal of insomnia. I wasn't thrilled at my job. I, was working later hours, dealing with a reverse commute, a car in the city. I also had construction in the building next door. I would wake up to jackhammers at 7 a.m. every morning. So the insomnia was getting worse, because I was getting increasingly anxious about not being able to fall asleep, because then I knew I would be waking up at 7 a.m. So the more anxious I got, the less sleep I got, the more insomnia I had. So it was this vicious cycle, and then the more coffee I had to drink to get through my work day. And I had to be intellectually on point for the job that I was doing. I was a tutor, a high-level tutor for SAT, ACT, biology, chemistry, and in that capacity, you can't be halfway there. You have to be catching your students' mistakes and then be able to explain it to them in a way that makes sense. So it was a very, very difficult time in my life. I really chalked it up to just not being happy in my living situation, not being happy in my job, and I kept focusing on getting out, but then I couldn't really figure out how to get out. And I eventually then my lease ran up and I moved out of the city just to give myself a break rather than deal with the stress of looking for a new apartment in the city over the holidays. Not a great time. So I just decided to come back home for a couple months while I figured it out and was less stressed out and figured out, okay, where am I going to be happy in the city? And in that time, I was diagnosed with cancer. So it was March 23rd, 2016. I woke up that night with sharp shooting pain in my left shoulder, which now I know is referred nerve pain due to the growth that was inside my chest. But at the time, I didn't know what it was. So I woke up that morning just having a very deep knowing I couldn't mess with whatever was going on in my body, and it couldn't wait any longer. Not even a day, not even a weekend longer. I just knew. And I started Googling my symptoms and self-diagnosed with a pulmonary embolism, as we do, right? I wouldn't entertain the alternative option based on the symptoms of lymphoma. So I called up my doctor's office and I said, hi, I need a CT scan this afternoon. And the receptionist's immediate response was, it doesn't work that way. You need a reason to get a CT scan. I was like, well, I know I need one. And she said, well, even if you do, I can assure you it won't be happening today. There's a whole process behind it. You need insurance approval, so on and so forth. So I just, in my mind, I'm like, okay, just make the earliest appointment you can. So I asked her for the earliest available appointment, and I walk in and she gives me this sideways glance like, oh, this crazy girl. And I go back to see the doctor and he sits me down and we're, reminiscing about the time that I had been in December, and I'm sharing my symptoms a little bit more. And he says, okay, well, I'm not sure it's anything to be too worried about, but just to be sure, I'll send you down for an x-ray. So I go down and I get the x-ray. And as I walk out, I notice the technician give me a little bit of a glance out of the corner of his eye. And he's young, so I was like, oh, maybe he just thinks I'm cute or something, as a silly little 30-year-old would do, right? So these are the stories that I was telling myself to not, go into fear or panic. And I went back up, as the doctor suggested, come back up and we'll review the scan together. So I go in and he pulls up the scan as I sit there across from him, and he looks at the screen and he goes, and then he turns the screen to face me and he points with his pen. You see this white film over your left lung? I have no idea what that is. So I sit there, take that in. I'm like, But I also knew my intuition had known, like, of course there was something wrong with me. And of course I had to be here in this moment. And the doctor turns and he goes, it looks like you've earned that CT scan after all. And sure enough, I got it that very afternoon. We got the insurance approval like that. And the next morning I was on my way to my uncle's funeral and we got a call from the hospital at the airport. It was about 9 a.m. We were about to board the plane. And it was a woman trying to book in a PET scan. And I was like, what? What's a PET scan? And she pauses, and it was one of those pregnant pauses. She goes, oh, so you haven't spoken with your doctor yet? And I was like, no, naturally. So she goes, okay, well, maybe speak with him and then give me a call back when you're ready. And so naturally, the first thing I do is Google PET scan. When he doesn't pick up, he's in with a patient. The receptionist had picked up. So I asked the receptionist, by the time I had Googled the PET scan, they were fully boarding the plane. I asked the receptionist to have the doctor email me the results. And when we landed, the results were there. I had a growth the size of a grapefruit inside my chest, compressing my heart and my lungs. And it was about 13 centimeters by 7 by 6, something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head now. Maybe it's 7 by 5. So ultimately oblong, not in the shape of a grapefruit like that, but the volume size of a grapefruit. So yes, it was big and it was compressing everything, but it was only stage 2B. Only. We take all the silver linings we can get when we're faced with these things. This is what I was focusing on is the silver linings. At least it was only that big. At least, oh no, so, okay, no, we hadn't staged it yet. So because I'm at my uncle's funeral, I'm grappling with this largely by myself. I told my dad and my sister, but we didn't want to share it with the rest of the family because here we were at my uncle's funeral who had just passed from cancer. My family had dealt with enough death. So then and there, I made a vow to myself to figure out anything I could possibly do that was in my power to start healing now. So I started Googling alternative methods of healing cancer. I started Googling nutrition for cancer. And I just allowed my intuition to guide me. And I read very quickly, I figured out, okay, dairy's not great, meat isn't great, plants are good. And I found somebody that had talked a lot about juicing. So I searched for a juice place in the middle of Oklahoma. That's where my uncle lived. So there I was in the middle of Oklahoma looking for a green juice. I found one. And I was very, very cautious with how I ate that weekend. Everybody knew I was healthy. I was already vegetarian, so didn't really raise too many flags or anything like that. But I went forward from that day forth doing everything within my power. I basically went full raw vegan. I cleansed out my system. I detoxed. I did no sugar aside from carrots and a little bit of fruit. I drank a lot of carrot juice, carrot ginger, because there's somebody out there who said they healed their cancer with carrot juice. So I was drinking a ton of it every day. And what I found out after the fact was, well, yes, the carrot juice did help to clean out my system. It helped with the detoxification process. And the beta carotene itself is very, very helpful for the liver. It puts the liver into high gear. And an overworked liver is one of the worst things for a body in a healing crisis. So the best thing anybody can do, regardless of what illness or a health crisis they are facing, the best thing anybody can do is to cleanse out the system and feed it living, healthy foods, high vibrational, organic, healthy foods, nutrient dense, filled with life. And that will cleanse out the system, give the liver an opportunity to reset. And then that's not talking about a full-on liver cleanse. I'm just saying it gives the liver less of a heavy burden. And then our immune system and our liver are able to process everything more efficiently and to release the waste more efficiently. So that was the number one thing I did. The number two thing I did was I knew I had to deal with the stress. And I knew in my mind that as much yoga as I did, I could not sit and meditate for more than 2 minutes. My back hurt, I would get fidgety and antsy. So the first thing I did after do the nutrition stuff was go look for a meditation course because I knew I had to do it and it was non-negotiable. My intuition just kicked into high gear, said you need to learn to meditate. So I found a course. Synchronicity. Things find us when we put out that energy. Our thoughts create our reality in very real ways. We are synced up with universal consciousness. The more I've gone deeper in this journey, the more I know this to be true. So I had that thought and I knew it to the core of my being. This is what I needed. Naturally, something came to me immediately. It was in the city and it got me meditating twice a day for 20 minutes a day within one weekend. And I picked up that habit and kept on with it for years. All through treatment, I did that in the hospital, at home, and for years, I kept up with that. My practice has evolved, my practice has shifted. I have many tools in my pocket now, but that form of meditation worked for me, and that's just it. The other forms of meditation, they just didn't resonate with me. I was able to sit there without having to sit with a straight back. We don't need to be Zen Buddhists to meditate. That was so liberating to me. And in the meantime, I also had seen a couple energy healers. I figured out my vitamin D was low. So I started sunbathing. I realized that our sunblock blocks a lot of the healthy sunlight, and the vitamin D is activated by sunlight. So we need that. It is also a really important part of melatonin production and regulation. We need the daylight. We need the sunlight. And New York City winters were just not doing it for me. So I made sunbathing and taking a vitamin D supplement part of it. I was deficient in selenium, so I started eating Brazil nuts. Not even taking a supplement. I was eating Brazil nuts, natural source. And I had added a few other supplements to my diet. By the time I started treatment, I had met with a functional medicine nutritionist. I had also, in that time, because it's a long process, and I was also connected with a biomagnet healer. And in that time, I had also met a naturopath that my mom had worked with for some other issue that she had dealt with. And so she put me in contact with her. And while it didn't work out for us to move forward, she was about to give birth. What she did say to me was, lymphoma is easy. And that kind of didn't really love the way she put it, but it was also in a sense reassuring at the same time. This is not dire. You're going to be okay. But the way she phrased where lymphoma came from, that stuck with me forever. And again, the deeper I have gone on this journey, the more confirmation and affirmation I have received that is the true root of a lot of these diseases. But lymphoma in particular was directly linked to emotional trauma. And mine was right here in my chest. So the PET scan, to backtrack, had detected activity. And I had met with the surgeon first, the top surgeon in New York, and he looked at us and said, this isn't a job for me, there's activity. So at that point I was like, just open me up and take this thing out. But lymphoma doesn't work that way. It is in the blood. So you can't just remove the growth and expect the cancer to be gone. And with an open, it would have been open heart surgery because it was on top of my heart and my lungs. So in hindsight, I'm kind of glad I didn't have to go through that, although there is that layer of just get it out. But it wasn't a job for him. So then I got the biopsy. And then they, you know, as I went in, they made sure I knew that there was a risk that they could go a little off course and puncture my heart or my lung. And I just sat there that morning and I was like, all right, guys, please just do your job well. Like, what else am I supposed to say at this point? Don't do the biopsy. So there's so many layers to this that are the cancer diagnostic process that are very stressful. But during this journey, and then I had the bone marrow biopsy, which my dad just reminded me of. And he put it very eloquently, don't forget you died. I was like, what? Oh, see, I don't know if I clinically died in that moment, but after the bone marrow biopsy, I rolled over, they did the thing. He was like, you're a champ. You handled that way better than a lot of these big macho dudes. It was like, I could feel it. They numbed it, but I could feel it grating my bone. It was so, he gave me the heebie-jeebies. I hate needles too. Don't know how I was ever gonna be a doctor. So I rolled over, turned over on my bed, and I was getting very faint. My sister and my dad were in the room, and I kept wanting to drink the carrot juice to give me some glucose, right? And at one point, I was kind of like this, and then the next thing I know, I wake up and there are 13 doctors standing around me. And there was an oxygen mask on my face. So in the meantime, what had happened? I had passed out. My dad caught the bottle. It was dribbling out of my face. I stopped breathing. My body tensed up. I started rolling off the table. My face was bright purple, and they ran to get the doctors. My sister ran to get the doctors. And the next thing I know is I have this thing on my face, and I'm like coming in and out. I'm coming in and out. And I felt like I passed out like 8 times. And they're like, no, you've been here the whole time. But my brain, it took a while for it to come back online. So that was extremely intense. Did my heart stop? I don't think so. Did I clinically die? Not really. Did I go off and have that NDE experience? No. But it was this moment where things in my body stopped. And what that was a massive vasovagal response. It was a very deep trauma response coming to the surface. That was not the only time in that journey that I had passed out. And that journey was not the first time I had passed out. And this was another sign. At the time, I hadn't fully grappled with it, but it was another sign that what was happening in my body was very deep trauma related. There was a lot of very deeply held trauma that was stuck in my body that kept me in the freeze response, the fawn response perhaps. So those energetics of being in that deep trauma were held so deeply within my body. And that is the journey that I have been on, is largely healing the trauma, the emotional wounds, the trauma, and shifting my mindset, shifting my beliefs about who I am and how powerful I am and how abundant I am and how amazing I am, because we are all amazing, and who I really am at my core, a divine spiritual being worthy of all. And my name means worthy of love. So my journey has been a very deep one of worthiness. Inner child healing has been a huge layer of that as well. So I had come from a very deep background in math and science. Growing up, I was very studious, very focused, very, very shy as well. Would not speak in class, would not raise my hand. Every note said along next to my A, more or less across the board, was Amanda needs to speak up more in class. Amanda needs to speak up more in class. Here I was, I knew so many answers, and yet I had this very, very deep fear of being wrong, of not being good enough. And there are many layers to that, and related to this lifetime, but also I believe going back in through my ancestral lineage. So when I was going through that diagnostic process, I had these little intuitive downloads that it was not my time to die and that I was meant to heal the family pattern of dying from cancer. So those were very deep intuitions that I held this entire journey. And I got deeper into the knowings of all the different layers of healing, all the different nuances, and then the pieces came together more directly. No, it was not my time. It was a blip. It was my spiritual awakening. It was my slap in the face, wake up call. You are not on your path, and now it's time to get on it. And there was this notion of healing the family pattern of dying from cancer. Whoa, that's pretty deep when you take a step back. For me, I just knew, oh yeah, okay, that's my job. And it really only began to sink in how profound that was as I started going through the journey. But we're getting into the layers of epigenetics. So we have been in this paradigm of genetic determination. Genes cause disease. And there is a layer of truth to that, but it is by far and away not the full picture, because what we have come to learn through the field of epigenetics is that really what determines genetic expression is the environmental factors that turn genes on or off. And that is the key to so much healing, to so much generational trauma. This is really the answer that so many of us have been seeking when it comes to chronic disease, autoimmune diseases, the cancer crisis, ADHD, autism, the list goes on. It can come from our parents, and it can also come from our environment. So we look at the environment we're in, the toxic environment in which we're living in. Our food is filled with chemicals and toxins and additives and hormones and antibiotics. Our water is polluted with all sorts of disgusting things and microplastics, not just in our water, but in our food as well. These are hormone disruptors, and we have been fed this lie. The biggest conspiracy of our time, in my opinion, the biggest conspiracy ever, is that we need chemicals to heal. This is the for-profit medical industry that has been guiding us, and it is not guiding us in the right direction. I know that's going to trigger some people, but if you've made it this far, maybe probably not. The truth is, we have made strides with modern medicine. I will not deny some of the life-saving miracles they perform, particularly the surgeons, particularly those baby heart surgeons. Oh my goodness, I cannot imagine doing that. And I am so grateful for the miracles that modern medicine can contribute to. And when it comes to these chronic diseases, modern medicine has failed. I'm not even going to say it's come up short. It has failed because it is not trying to solve these problems. It is not trying to get to the root. It is symptom care. It is sick care. It is a model built on us being sick. The for-profit industry of medicine is built on people being sick. What they prefer most is repeat customers. I met a woman in the oncology waiting room when I was going through my treatment. She was on her 5th different cancer. And it was a mark of pride almost that she had made it through so many. I was very happy for her that she was still surviving, but that's just it. She was in survival mode. She was not thriving. She was not getting back on her feet. She was not healing. And that's the thing that I knew I had to look at. Why aren't we healing? Why is this system not working for us? And so that has been my journey of going deeper. I had the background in biology. I had the background in science. Freshman year biology, I knew the path wasn't for me. It felt too sterile is the word that I used. I was still not aware and awake of all the layers that I am now. But that was the word I used because the humanity had been removed from medicine the way I now see it. Yes, it was too sterile. Psychology, loved it. That's what I wound up graduating with, a BA in psychology. By my senior year, I also knew that becoming a therapist and working with depressed people my whole life just wasn't my path. And I really honor those who do move forward in both of these professions because I know people do so with the intention of helping, of serving, of really trying to help cure people. But the systems are not built for that. And most of us are indoctrinated into these belief systems that these are the best way forward. I think my intuition knew there was something off with the psychological model, the therapy model as well. Couldn't put my finger on it, just knew that it wasn't for me. Fast forward, I went to grad school for a research degree in social psychology where I learned about perspective and decision making and really dove deep into the nuances of societal and cultural beliefs and how they influence our personal belief system. So how the human develops their perspective of the world and their self through these cultural and societal belief systems. So we are inherently linked to everything around us. From that perspective, we are not isolated. And yet we have been also operating in the West anyway on this model of individualism, which has really separated us and isolated us and left us in a state of disconnection. We've even separated mind and body, the Cartesian dichotomy, dualism, whatever, and that has not served us and certainly not in the capacity of medicine. We're all very aware of the placebo effect, and yet we deny the power of the mind. What is the placebo effect? if not the power of the mind, the belief that this pill is going to cure them, and it does, just as much, more often than not, than the actual medication itself. It's the power of belief that heals. So when we believe that we are in a position to heal, our body heals. It moves in line with that. Doesn't matter what the medicine is, more often than not. And I'm not saying medicine doesn't play a role. I'm not saying the chemotherapy didn't play a role in my healing, that without the chemotherapy I would have been fine. I don't know. I'm not saying I would have been. I chose not to go that route because I had my sister's wedding in 6 months' time and a lot of family members who were very concerned about my well-being, and it was an aggressive form. It was my path to go forward and do the treatment and to experience the ravaging of the body, the gut health issues that ensued, the incredible insomnia that was not cured whatsoever. I was on Ativan the whole time, and I knew immediately I could not stay on that. I weaned myself off everything faster than the doctor wanted, including the antibiotics, which were further ravaging my gut. And I continued forward with my holistic protocols. And it wasn't until I moved to Miami that I got to the root of my insomnia. I found a holistic Chinese doctor just a few blocks from me. And I wound up doing a cortisol test to test whether I had adrenal fatigue at her suggestion. I didn't really know much about it, but I did know that it wasn't recognized by Western medicine. What is recognized is stage 4 kidney failure. It turned out that based on my cortisol levels throughout the day, I was stage 3, which meant there were days where I could not get out of bed. If I worked out, it put me out for the rest of the day. They often say work out to burn off the stress and it will boost your endorphins and yada, yada, yada. If you're experiencing adrenal fatigue, it will do the opposite. It will deplete you beyond capacity to function in some cases, as was mine. So the only way to heal adrenal fatigue is through diet and supplementation. And that's exactly why the Western model does not recognize it until kidney fails, right? Because otherwise, how are they going to profit? Sadly, that is the model under which we've been operating. It's a stark reality for many to face. I have so very deeply integrated this knowing of how much this model does not work for us, that it does not trigger me whatsoever. And yet I know there's a lot of people out there that are not there yet. So take this with a grain of salt if you must, but also understand that this is a really perfect, poignant example of where the Western model does not work. It doesn't work for chronic disease. It does not work for chronic conditions. It does not work for hormones. It does not work for nutritional deficiencies. There's a lot of ways in which it doesn't work. So we must embrace that and acknowledge it if we truly want to heal. That is not the only path forward. So this is the crux of my message. This is what I want to share, the seeds that I want to plant, is that we cannot isolate ourselves on this journey of healing. We cannot isolate ourselves into one path. I believe in an integrative approach. I believe in taking a lot of the value from the alternative world that has become known as, and the natural world, and integrating that into a holistic healing plan. Yes, I do believe that the interventions of Western medicine do save lives and are necessary in many cases. If there's an option to cut the thing out quickly because otherwise it's going to lead to organ failure. Like for example, mine was growing so quickly and my left lung, there was about 2 millimeters of breathing space left. It could have collapsed. So in my case, that's one example of, yeah, probably the treatment was the better option. So For me, it was a journey of doing the integration, of doing the healing simultaneously. To be fair, I didn't tell my doctor 99% of what I was doing on the side. I knew he was also legally, liability-wise, not really allowed to say a whole lot. Once I took a step back and zoomed out and really saw the system for how it was, they're not really allowed to say too much. So maybe they do know more than they let on in some cases, but I did most of this on my own. By round 6, it was not my primary oncologist, but the oncologist on duty walked in, and there I was, my last round in the hospital, standing next to my adjustable table, typing away at my blog on my computer, and I look over and I'm like, hi, and she goes, isn't this your last round? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, how are you doing so well right now? And she wasn't the only one to say that. The nurses came in and they would say, oh my goodness, you're so positive, you look so great, you're, whatever they had to say. I kept a very positive mindset, a very positive attitude throughout the whole situation. And this is part of it. I was visualizing myself being healthy at my sister's wedding, putting myself in the energy of being healed and healthy, of everybody being relieved, of my entire family actually being able to celebrate. So I had a very clear end goal for which I needed to be healthy. So that most certainly helped, because it not only shifted my mindset, it put me in the energy of being healed. And in the meantime, I was eating very healthy. I brought all my own food to the hospital, organic, healthy, no sugar. And I was meditating even in the hospital. I was journaling. I had every intention of reading a lot of books, and I absolutely could not. I absolutely could not. So I allowed myself for one of the first times in my life to relax, to just relax, to watch Netflix, to watch silly rom-coms, and to let that be okay. I couldn't work. It was impossible for me to do so. My brain could not do it. I was exhausted. I had chemo brain. So this was one of the impacts of the chemos. Yeah, I had the gut issues. I had the chemo brain, and yet my side effects were not nearly as bad as they could have been. I had mouth sores one round, and then I found out from an angel of a friend to take L-lysine. They do not tell you to do this in the hospital. They tell you to take the magic mouthwash. I took the L-lysine. They started healing immediately. One of the most painful and difficult side effects is healed by a simple supplement, and they do not tell us about this. People suffer needlessly because the medical industry does not want us to have our hands on the tools that actually help us to heal. They want to cure the thing. They don't really want it to heal. That's the stark reality. That is the harsh truth that many of us have to become aware of, so that we realize it is up to us to heal ourselves. It is up to us to take responsibility for our own healing. And it might feel unfair in a certain capacity, but let me tell you, it is ultimately liberating, because we are no longer allowing life to happen to us. We are now taking control of our lives, and how we show up. And how we show up really determines our experience of our reality. So it is extremely empowering. It is extremely, I like that word actually. It's empowering. It is extremely empowering and liberating to take responsibility for your own healing, to take responsibility for your own life. And I'm not sitting here pretending it's easy, but this is exactly why I've gone through the journey, to help smooth the path and maybe not completely straighten it out, but to help, get rid of some of the forks in the road, and some of the twists and turns are maybe going to be a less twisty and turny. So we all have to go on our upward spiral ourselves. And the truth is, many of us do have to hit rock bottom. We have to go on the downward spiral and hit rock bottom for us to wake up. It takes that crisis. But what we are facing now is a collective crisis. So I see all around me that people are starting to wake up more and more to the truth of how our system is not working for us. And this is not just medicine. This goes onto every level of our current society. It is education, it is politics, that's our financial system, our economy as a whole. It is the way we are divided and separated needlessly into all of these different subdivisions and tribes. It's tribal warfare 101 right now. And this is keeping us in a low vibration of fear and separation, which is the opposite of truth, that is love. And that is the journey that I have been brought home to, the truth that is love. So my gene keys, it's another system kind of like astrology. My gene keys are truth and illumination. So I am here to help illuminate truth, the truth of who we are, the truth of our potential, the truth of our world, and how beautiful and bountiful and abundant it is. This scarcity, this lack, this survival that we have been kept in, that is not truth, it's the illusion. And this is what we are here to transcend individually and collectively. And it must start within, as within, so without. If we want a peaceful, bountiful, abundant, beautiful world, we have to create that peace and harmony within first. We have to create the beauty within, create harmony for ourselves within. And this brings me to the energetic layer. So if we are operating based on frequencies of a higher vibration, starting with gratitude, gratitude is the threshold into the higher elevated emotional states. And I say elevated, but it is more of this idea of expansion. Abundance is about expansion. And to me, abundance is about health and wealth and love and joy. It is not just financial wealth, as a lot of people associate with it, which is all beautiful. Of course, we should feel safe and held and supported and free to live our lives the way we want to and feel ultimately abundant. But again, it's not just the financial layer, but many of us have been put into this space of scarcity. And that is also going to prevent us from healing as well. Those lower vibrations are not a vibrational match for healing. What does heal? Love. The frequency of love is the most healing frequency of all. Well, I say the most, but all of the higher elevated frequencies are based on and related to love. So when we experience joy, when we experience bliss, when we experience peace, we are experiencing these higher elevated states. Love, wholeness, bliss, all of these are really beautiful, very high frequency emotional states that bring us into the energy of healing and bring us into the energy of magnetizing all that we desire, all that we want. And when we are in a state of being grateful for all that we have, the universe is saying, okay, you are ready for more. And when we let go of the need for more, that's when everything comes. That's when everything clicks into place. So if we heal one area of our life, it will impact the rest. As long as we're conscious of how we are operating and we're conscious of our beliefs, because the truth is, yes, we can have beliefs about one area of our life that are much stronger than another. Maybe we believe that we are financially successful, but we don't believe that love is possible, or vice versa, for example. And once we take a step back and begin to do the self-inquiry and to do the self-examination and say, okay, where am I not in full alignment with what I want, with what I believe is there for me, but maybe that belief isn't fully embodied. We need to embody the belief in order to be that match. This is why mindset alone isn't really enough. And this is where the deeper healing comes into play. So I did not plan any of that. I have just kept going and going. I feel like there's a lot more that I want to say. But before I go on for 2 hours, let me just get really clear on, if there's anything else that I wanted to share about my journey in nuanced detail. So yeah, I mean, again, this really happened, all of my healing happened entirely outside of the traditional quote unquote healthcare system. I think what we say is the traditional model was never traditional. It's only in the last 100 odd years that we have been operating in this way, when they took over the medical schools and basically forced the allopathic model, the pharmaceutical model, onto universities. And that is where the doctors are trained, the doctors of the day, because at the same time, anybody who was still going down the alternative path was kind of lambasted and even made to be sound like a con artist, perhaps. So the truth is, you know, our spinal health is extremely important, to just offer one example, because this is where the energy flows up. So if our spine is out of alignment, our energy isn't flowing the way it could be. Just one example. There are so many. So I had nutritional deficiencies, gut health issues, hormonal imbalances. A note on the hormones. So I did have the egg freezing procedure done, which meant I had to go off the pill. Now, I had been on the pill for about 12 years, almost consistently. I had gone off a couple times because I ran out of the pills. Like one time I was abroad, for example. And then I had to wait for my cycle to regulate. So aside from a couple of months there or there, I was on it for a consecutive 12 years. I was a late bloomer in a lot of ways, in every way. Here I am, I'm 37, so yeah. I got my cycle at 15 and a half, went to college as a cheerleader, and my cycle still wasn't entirely regular. So I went on it simply to regulate my cycle, and then, you know, they said it was safe. I was like, well, this is easy now, I can know when it is, so on and so forth. And the doctors told me it was fine. So I was on it for 12 years, went off it to do the other hormones, to do the egg freezing process. Then I was on even more hormones to suppress my cycle during treatment. I won't go into every detail here, maybe not. So I finally, once treatment ended, I was like, okay, nothing else is going into my body unless it's absolutely necessary. So I stopped the Ativan, I stopped the steroids, I stopped the hormones, and in the meantime, I had to wait for my cycle to come back. And more grounded in that I became of not putting anything into my body. And my cycle, for the first time in my life, finally regulated on its own. And so to this day, I do not take hormones. And that brings me to the insomnia. So I already shared that it was the adrenal fatigue, and it did take a while to heal that, but it worked. I now, to this day, can sleep for 8 hours a night without taking anything. That was completely unheard of to me for a long time. I'm not saying every night I sleep perfectly. At the end of the day, though, I can sleep, which is amazing. And before I moved to Miami, I was still in the Northeast, and I went to a doctor in North Jersey, my GP at the time. I was still getting my checkups and whatnot, of course, because I was still soon after treatment. But it was just basic checkups. I really wasn't on anything, but I was so desperate. I asked her at one point, it was the February before I moved down to Miami, which was May of 2018. I asked her what I could do about the insomnia, if she had any solutions or help. And I was really against putting more pharmaceuticals into my body at that point, but I was also desperate. I was like, maybe I just need to nip this in the bud and then I can wean myself back off of it. So she gave me trazodone. I took it for about a week, and then one morning I woke up sobbing. I could not stop crying. I felt in the depths of despair, and I couldn't figure out why or where it had come from, but I was so deep, and I couldn't stop. And I called my mom, which I basically have never really in my life done for that kind of thing. And she came over and she was concerned. And finally, it occurred to me. I was like, wait a second, the only thing that I've done differently is take this medication for the last week or so. So I looked it up, and sure enough, it was an antidepressant. And that was the only moment in my life where I really truly understood, before I figured out what it was. That morning was the only time I really truly understood how people could get to the point of wanting to end it. I understood what it felt like to be in that depth. Not that I was myself, but it felt so awful that I was like, oh my goodness. And there I was in that experience caused by an antidepressant. I was like, how? Like I took a depressant, I took an antidepressant and became depressed. I mean, I immediately went off it and never took anything like that again. And I will never take anything like that again. And the more I know about the link between gut health and mental health, everything is related, everything is linked. The mind-body separation is false. So if we're having mental health struggles, we must first look at the gut. I'm not saying they all originate in the gut, but if we're not focused on gut health, if somebody is struggling with depression and anxiety, then we are not looking at the full picture. And that I am very, very adamant about, because 70% of the serotonin in our bodies resides in the gut. So if our gut is off, if our gut flora balance is off, then our entire gut system is off. So there are so many layers to this, and yet it's so simple. What is our internal terrain? Are we treating our body like a temple, like the temple that it is? Our body is our ultimate home. It is our vessel here on earth. It is the vessel for our soul. If we are not treating our body like we treat a fancy car, a lot of us have nice cars that we only put high quality fuel into. And yet, a lot of us also eat junk food at the same time. So we've become so separated from our own sacredness. And that is the fundamental disconnection in society, is forgetting our true divine nature, forgetting that we are one with nature. Our food system is largely dead food. We have to skirt the outsides of the grocery store to get anything real. And everything else in the middle, most of it is junk. And even the quote unquote healthy foods are filled with preservatives, are filled with chemicals or gums, or don't even get me started on the high fructose corn syrup, but the corn everything, the soy everything, all of that is bad. The GMOs, oh my goodness, this is not natural. Our bodies don't recognize them as food, and they become inflamed, causing a whole host of diseases within. Oh my goodness, and the colors. So I'm not preaching perfection. I know it's very challenging. None of us can be perfect in this world. It is pretty much impossible at this point. So we must do our best to be highly, highly discerning and deliberate about what we put into our bodies. It's okay to indulge every now and again. Yes, it's my Remission Rebirthday, and I just had a cupcake. So, and it's not one I made myself. It came from a nice bakery, so I'm sure the ingredients are decent. Probably not organic, unfortunately. But at the end of the day, I'm not saying we have to be perfect monks about our lifestyles. I love indulging every now and again, and we are working against the system right now. If we want to be healthy, we have to take ourselves out of the system. It does take a little bit of discipline. It does take a lot of discernment. So I'm not saying it's easy, and yet the more of us that do this, we are still working in a capitalist society. It's not free market capitalism, but there is that layer of voting with the dollar. So the more that we choose local, the more that we choose organic, the more that we choose natural, the more that's going to infiltrate our systems. And the more that we say no to all of this nonsense, the more they're going to have to pause and listen and pay attention. There's so many layers to this. Again, I cannot address everything in great detail in this video, But this journey woke me up to a lot of the things that are wrong in this world. But it also woke me up to the amazing, beautiful potential and possibilities that exist within. I was planted with so many seeds over the last 6 years, and I had some seeds planted before, to be fair. I very much believe that I have been guided and that my journey has been this way for a reason. And over the years, I found all sorts of opportunities that activated me into other levels of being, into higher levels of being, that planted seeds into my conscious awareness, that opened me up into other possibilities and perspectives. And here we are, over the last couple years, I have really blossomed my consciousness and awareness into this higher level of understanding the world, of being connected with the divine, that there is no separation, there is no disconnection. And it has brought me on this really, really beautiful journey of going deeper into my body. And at the same time, the deeper we dive, the higher we rise. So more and more beauty has been coming into my field, more and more synchronicities have been coming into my field. And now I know that the answers all lie within. It has all led me back to the heart. It has all led me back to the heart, the treasure chest within. So we have all these energy centers, and within our heart, we hold a sacred space, and we can all access this sacred space of inner knowing of our truth. It's the seat of our soul, I suppose you could say. And everything then brings us back home to ourselves once we come into this beautiful realization that all we need is here. All that we've been seeking truly lies within, and it's all been here all along. We've just been led astray by the mind, overthinking and overanalyzing and believing the illusion of success that has been fed to us, the illusion of what life is meant to look like. And once we let go of that and tune in and really start to listen to the whispers of our soul and follow our soul, that's when the magic happens. That's when the abundance begins to flow. That's when life unfolds and blossoms beautifully. So I've been guided on so many different layers of this journey. Let me just share with you that I totally turned my back on medicine and therapy and even getting a PhD, which my advisor would have supported me for, but I started to see behind the scenes of the red tape behind funding and publish or die, and I was like, this still feels off, this still feels skewed. I will say that not all science is bad science, but there's a huge difference between science and science with a dollar sign in front of it. So there is a great deal of bias in the world of science, and in the world of pure science, high intention science, science for the sake of progress and evolution. There's still so many people who hold those visions closely. And these are the voices that are not the loudest, sadly. But there is a huge disconnect between science and practice. So I will say that. But I do know that I was not meant to go down these traditional fields of the medical corridors and the ivory towers and whatnot. I was meant to take the alternative path of becoming a coach. I became a transformational health coach. I studied a post-grad certificate in positive psychology and well-being. That was catered toward, yes, people with grad degrees in psychology. So this is becoming a much more widely recognized field. And yet so many people still see this as nonsense and people just trying to make a buck or whatever. And also that speaks to money mindset as well, just going to say, because doctors don't work for free by a long shot. I know my oncologist appointments were $300 out of pocket. How long did I see him? About 10 minutes. What did he actually do? Just say, okay, you're okay. Like I didn't actually ever have to pay out of pocket. but we're skewed because insurance covers those things, but it doesn't cover a lot of the things. I will say that the therapy that I was looking for, psychological therapy, the only therapist that I could find that had the certifications to deal with the trauma modalities, the trauma healing modalities. Trauma is the root of all, in my opinion. And not just my opinion. Oh, and I just saw 1111 on my recording there. So there's that. None of them accepted insurance, and they were not cheap. So there is a layer of allowing yourself to invest in yourself. Once we realize that we are worthy, then investing in ourselves, investing in our health, investing in our growth, investing in our expansion suddenly becomes the only option. But so many people see it the other way around, rather spend money on the cars, on the fancy dinners out, on the shoes, whatever it may be for you. And we neglect the most important vessel of all, the most important material item of all, if you will, our own bodies, our own self that is so much more than the material. This is the most important investment we can make in our lives. So I just want to shift that perspective. For so many, we get trapped in these ideas of how the world is, and we get trapped in our perceptions that may not actually be true, that we don't allow ourselves to see alternative possibilities or alternative pathways forward. I have seen many people stuck in the spin cycle of healing and being frustrated and not getting anywhere. And it makes me very sad because they don't see the possibility that lies outside their very narrow perception of reality. And I'm not trying, this isn't from a space of judgment, it's from a space of, like it hurts me to see them suffer needlessly. And everybody's path is different. I do know that. Everybody has to come to it in their own time and be ready for it. And I just very, very dearly want to see everybody thrive. I truly hope that some seeds are planted, that some shift in perspective may happen here or there. This is why I want to share. So I really, really deep down to the core of my being, really believe in this expansion that is possible for all, and we have to choose it. So I really dearly hope that some people listening may have received something from this, whatever it may be. And I'm not necessarily done yet, but there's more to my journey, so many more details I can share, which I will going forward, but not in this video because it's already quite long. But yeah, I have made so many mistakes on my way, on my journey. And I've met a lot of people, a lot of coaches, of course, who are not in integrity. But then we must also remember there is such a thing as medical malpractice. There is such a thing as the treatment isn't working. There is such a thing as going to therapy for years and not really making much progress. So we can point out the flaws, but we must be able to point out the flaws in every field and with everyone. And I'm by no means suggesting I'm perfect. I'm by no means suggesting that I have all the answers either. And yet here I am. I am healthy. I'm on no medications. My hair is long again. See, it's like, can't even get it in the frame right now. Almost down to my waist, and it grows slow. I have to say, my hair is not a fast growing sort. So, I'm not perfect by a long shot, but these things are working. And I've had a lot of amazing opportunities come to me. I've had a lot of amazing experiences of abundance. And there's more for me to do. And there's so much more that's coming to me. By the day, I'm feeling more connected. By the day, I'm getting more intuitions and downloads and ideas. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is going to be so amazing. So, we are just on this ever unfolding journey that is just asking us to choose it. It is just asking us to move forward. This is what our soul wants. Our soul wants to expand. We are in an ever expanding universe. This is the quantum reality that we are living in. It's all expansion, and we are all connected to it. So if we keep ourselves stuck in a little box, we are living in an anti-life existence. We are not growing, we are not expanding, we are not truly living. And this is what we are here to do: live fully, joyfully, completely. This is my number one lesson from my cancer journey. So I am just sending so much love, and I'll just end it with all the things that I have done, because I think it might just add a little bit of perspective for some people. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer, share resources that are not in my wheelhouse, that I don't do myself. But so yes, in the past 6 years, I have already had 2 psych degrees and 3 yoga teacher training certifications, to give you just an idea of the baseline of my knowledge coming into this. I was reading about positive psychology and all sorts of things. But since then, I've completed those 2 coaching certifications that I mentioned, the transformational health coaching and the postgrad certificate in positive psychology and well-being. I've done meditation trainings, biomagnetism, bioresonance therapy, healing, Reiki, remote energy healing of various kinds. I've done breathwork, sound healing. I've had readings done, like Akashic Records readings, tarot readings and such. I've tried plant medicine of a few types, and I have done a bunch of different workshops and trainings and retreats. I've worked with self-love coaches. I've worked with mindset and abundance coaches. I've worked with trauma-informed coaches, business and soul wealth coaches. I've done a lot. I've even dived into the ancient wisdom mystery schools of the priestess path, as well as done Tony Robbins and Dr. Joe Dispenza. So I have really, really explored it all, and I'm constantly reading and growing. And I've been listening to my intuition, which guided me to all these places around the world where I met people, I did trainings, I did workshops, and was linking to the energetic framework, the grid work of the planet. So I was getting these downloads and knowings and intuitions. I was in the Great Pyramid in Egypt last December, where I got this powerful download that became the course that I now offer, the 8 Golden Keys to Abundance, which is basically a frequency upgrade to each chakra of the system. So it's all coming full circle, and it's just such a beautiful, powerful journey when you tune in and listen to your soul path. And everybody's path is different. Your soul is going to lead you in whatever direction is meant to lead you. So tune in and listen. What lights you up? What brings you joy? Those are the things that really guide us forward. Those are what we need to tune into and do, because this is how the world is going to heal, by us healing ourselves and by us living in our truth. One by one, we are elevating the consciousness of our planet. We are elevating the conscious reality in which we're all existing, the web that connects us all. So the more we do the work, the more we impact the world around us. And so as within, so without, we will begin to create the systems and structures that will elevate. So it's a beautiful journey that is bringing us up the spiral, back home to truth, back home to the source that we are all from, that we are all connected to now. So I don't even know how to end this right now. So just remember that everything is all connected. We are all connected. And the paradigm that is still in existence, that is crumbling, that is breaking down really, is not serving us. It has not been serving us. So we are being asked and called to step into a new version of self, to create a new version of reality, to create heaven on earth. This is the way I see things. Things are breaking down right now because we are going to get the opportunity to rebuild anew, rebuild something that works for the all. So it's a tumultuous time because a lot is crumbling from beneath us, and a lot of us don't know what's coming next. And it can be scary to be living in the uncertainty. I know this very well because of diagnosis. That was the worst time for me and for so many others I know, the diagnostic period of uncertainty. And yet, on the other side of the rainbow lies the pot of gold that is available to us all. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. If you, and please feel free to comment, to like, subscribe. I have all sorts of resources that I will link below. I have a free infinite possibilities visualization. The notion of infinite possibilities allowed me to really step out of the comfort zone and to really see a more expansive version of reality for myself, and to step into that and to feel it. And it's this notion that anything is possible in this quantum reality that we exist in. So it's amazing, it's beautiful, it's wonderful. And we just have to allow ourselves to see that even that could be possible. So that's available, that's free. I have a book upcoming. I have a course, then my Spiritual Abundance with Ease deep dive container that walks us through this journey. So everything that I have is included in that as bonuses, as part of the whole shebang. And so that is really the main container, Spiritual Abundance with Ease. And again, abundance for me is everything, and spiritual is the notion that we are all divine and we are reconnecting to the truth that is within. So it's just guiding us on this journey of stepping into the flow of life, returning to the truth of who we are, by guiding us through the shadows, if you will, on this journey with a guidebook, with support. Guidebook, I say in air quotes, because it's not a book, it's a program, but it's structured and it's guided with so much room for your own personal journey to come through. So this is the course or the program, I suppose, that I really wish I had found years ago. It would have made my journey quite a lot easier. And I know that this is how it was meant to be, because this is my role, I suppose. So bringing all the pieces together into one coherent journey. So the 4 pillars: physical body, mental body, emotional body, energetic body, and then a 12-week journey to really guide us through this process of seeing what's not aligned and then coming back into alignment, and then stepping forward into our power to blossom into our highest version of self on the journey of self-mastery and becoming who we are meant to be. So I'm sending you so much love, onward and upward in love and light, and I will see you soon. Thank you so, so much for being here.